What is the difference between Berdan priming system and Boxer priming system? Berdan priming system uses 2 flash holes, and this is a 7.62 military case. It is very, very common with military ammunition that it uses the Berdan priming system. The Boxer priming system uses a single flash hole, and this is the one that is reloadable. Because it's got a single flash hole, the primer can be punched out easily. There are reloading processes available for the Berdan primer, but really I don't bother with it. It's time consuming, you really can't reload these. So stick with Boxer cases, Boxer ammunition. If you're buying ammunition in light to use it for the cases for reloading, if you're buying factory ammunition to use the cases for reloading, make sure that they have the single flash hole Boxer priming system. It all seems very time consuming to load a few rounds of ammunition. Is there a way to speed up the process? Well, the process that you see here is the single stage process, and this is the slowest way of reloading ammunition because you have to batch reload, you have to go through each stage in turn. Also, what takes a lot of time is the powder. I shoot very, very accurate ammunition out of a very, very accurate rifle, and the reason why I get the best accuracy is because I am religious about measuring my powder charges down to tenth of a grain to make sure that they are all uniform and that all other processes are uniform. And that's the way that I get the fantastic accuracy that I do from my rifle. The single stage press suits me down to the ground because it is very, very sturdy and bomb proof, and you can do each stage very, very accurately. It's a great press for people who are starting out reloading to learn the process. But as I said, with different types of presses, there are presses that are quicker. The turret press is quicker because you can index each die in turn, one after the other, and you don't have to screw them in and out. The progressive press is even faster than that. With progressive presses and turret presses, you also get auto powder measures, which throw a specific volume of powder, which you can set the volume to be an exact weight, and it automatically drops that volume of powder into the case or into your pan. That speeds things up as well, but in my experience, auto powder measures just don't give you that level of accuracy in your powder that you get with scales and a powder trickle or a little powder scoop. You do get automatic electronic scales which measure the powder into, it has a little powder trickle and it's all automated, so you push a button and it trickles the powder out into the pan. It saves a lot of time, but those cost £200–300. So you can use the auto powder measures to speed up the powder measuring process, which is great for pistol ammunition. It's great for plinking practice ammunition, or you shooting a semi-auto rifle, or something like that. But for high consistency rifle ammunition, you really need to be measuring each load consistently with scales. And you know, that's my opinion, but that's the general consensus of opinion is that's the way you've got to be doing it. But if you want to speed up the process, then an auto powder measure or an electronic scales and powder measuring system, or combined with a turret press or a progressive press, will speed up your reloading no end. Some progressive presses are so quick that you can load 400-500 rounds in an hour. They're that quick. What are the signs of high pressure? Well, to look at the signs of high pressure, we really need to be looking at the primer of the case. We need to fire the round, and we need to look at the primer. Now, if the primer looks like, where did it go? There it is. Okay. If the primer looks like a new primer, but just except with a little dimple in it from the firing pin, that is a sign of acceptable pressure. The higher the pressure of the cartridge, the more pressure is put on the primer, and the primer gets pushed back, and I'll show you what happens when the pressure starts to gets higher. When the pressure starts to get higher, the primer starts to flatten out. You can see this one, that it looks a lot flatter compared to that one. It's flattened out. It's been squished against your bolt face, and it's been flattened out. You can see here, this gap here, the gap in between the case and the primer, okay, it kind of looks wider than what it does on that one. That's because this one here, it's been squished flat against the bolt face. When you start seeing signs of really high pressure is when, I don't know if you can see that or not, but the primer is sitting slightly proud of the head of the case. It's sitting ever so proud. You can actually feel it, and it's actually been the primer has been pushed back because of the high pressure. It's also flattened out, but the real telltale sign comes when you look at the dimple, and I don't know if you can see that, but it looks a bit like a crater, and the dimple is actually raised with a kind of a lip round it. Those are telltale signs of high pressure. Now, what is acceptable? Well, in my experience, in my opinion, the flattening out is acceptable pressure, but when you start seeing the primer being forced back and sitting proud, and also the sort of the raised ridge around the dimple, yeah, see if you can get a good look at that, the raised ridge around the dimple, then this is getting too high a pressure. If the primer is actually perforating, and I don't have an example of that, but if the primer is actually perforating because the primer is being forced back and with such force onto the firing pin, then stop using that load, because it is overpressure. It is really overpressure. Flattening of the primer is okay, but when you start getting that ridge around the dimple, then that's a sign of high pressure.